Bonjour, Canada.
Good afternoon, Canada.
I must tell you, I took 4 years of French in school. First time I attempted to make a speech in French, I was laughed at. So that's as good as I can get right now. But seriously, thank you very, very much. Speaker of the House of Commons, Speaker of the Senate, members of the Parliament, thank you for the very kind welcome for my wife and I. Prime Minister Trudeau, you were my first meeting with a foreign leader just 1 month after my presidency during the hardest days of COVID-19. We had to make a visit virtual, but since then, we've been all over the world taking on some of the toughest issues our nations have faced in a very long time. I want to thank you for your partnership and for your personal friendship. I thank you very much. Jill and I are grateful for the hospitality you and Sophie have shown us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to have the opportunity to uphold a tradition carried out by so many of my predecessors in addressing the hallowed halls of the Canadian democracy, although this is a different hall. You've done a hell of a job here. This is really beautiful. It's really very beautiful. This is a custom that speaks to the closeness of our relationship. Americans and Canadians are two people, two countries, in my view, sharing one heart. It's a personal connection. No two nations on earth are bound by such close ties, friendship, family, commerce, and culture. Our labor unions cross borders. So do our sports leagues. Baseball, basketball, hockey. Listen to this, hockey. I have to say, except the Leafs. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. They beat the Flyers back in January. That's why. And if I didn't see that, I married a Philly girl. If I didn't say that, I'd be sleeping alone, fellas. I like you, but not that much. It can be easy to take a partnership between Canada and the United States as a given. And but when you stop and think about it, it's really a wonder. 5,552-mile-long border, more than 8,800 kilometers, defined by peaceful commerce, trading relationships that measure more than $2.5 billion a day. Every day, hundreds of thousands of people cross the borders going in north and south to work or just to visit, knowing they'll find a warm welcome on the other side of the border. Americans love Canadians, and that's not hyperbole. It's a data-driven fact. Earlier this week, the Gallup poll did a new poll showing American opinions on different countries in the world. This is a fact. Canada ranked at the very top, 88% favorable rating among Americans. Up from 87 the year before. I take credit for that 1 point. I suspect every politician in this room would do a hell of a lot to get those kind of numbers. But there's a reason for it. The same fundamental aspirations reverberate across both our nations, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, to live in freedom. Not just freedom, but live in freedom with dignity, to relentlessly pursue the possibilities of tomorrow, to leave our children and our grandchildren a future that's better because of our efforts, the people in this room and a similar room in the United States. President Kennedy said, and when he spoke here in 1961, and I quote, he said, "Ours is the unity of equal and independent nations, co-tenants of the same continent, heirs of the same legacy, and fully sovereign associates in the same historic endeavor to preserve freedom for ourselves and for all who wish it, for all who wish it. Through more than a century of that historic endeavor, Canada and the United States have had each other's backs. In war and in peace, we have been the stronghold of liberty, safeguard for the fundamental freedoms that give us our lives, literally, give our lives meaning. We have gladly stepped into the responsibilities of global leadership because we understand all that is at risk for Canadians and Americans alike when freedom is under attack anywhere in the world. Today, our destinies are intertwined and they're inseparable, not because of the inevitability of geography, but because it's a choice we've made again and again. The United States chooses to link our future with Canada because we know that we'll find no better partner, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, no more reliable ally, no more steady friend. And today I say to you and to all the people of Canada that you will always, always be able to count on the United States of America. I guarantee it. Together, we have built a partnership that is an incredible advantage to both our nations. That doesn't mean we never disagree, as any two countries will do from time to time. But when we disagree, we solve our differences in friendship and in goodwill, because we both understand our interests are fundamentally aligned. As we stand at this inflection point in history, I had a professor who once explained an inflection point as you're going down the highway at 60 miles an hour and you rapidly turn in one direction 5 degrees. You never get back on the same path again. But you're on a different course where the decisions we make in the coming years will determine the course of our world for decades to come. It happens every 5 or 6 generations, but we're at that point. Nothing gives me greater confidence in the future than knowing Canada and the United States stand together still. Today, I'd like to speak a little bit about the future, if I may. A future that's ours to seize. You know, I get criticized at home sometimes for saying that I used to always, President Obama used to always kid me because I'd always say to him in our private meetings, a country's never more optimistic than its president or its leaders. Well, I have never been more optimistic in my life about the prospects. I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. We are so well positioned. The future built around our shared responsibilities, prosperity, security, shared values. First, it's a future built on shared prosperity, where Canada and the United States continue to anchor the most competitive, prosperous, and resilient economic region in the world. That's a fact. That's just a fact. Where our supply chains are secure and reliable from end to end because we're creating the value at every step right here in North America. We're mining critical minerals, to manufacturing, packaging the most advanced semiconductors in the world, to producing electric vehicles and clean energy technology together. A future where we understand that economic success is not in conflict with the rights and dignity of workers or meeting our responsibilities addressing the climate crisis, but rather those things depend on us doing that. Depend on us doing that. Factually. Since becoming president, I've been laser focused on rebuilding the U.S. economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Not a whole lot trickle down from the top down on my dad's kitchen table. And by the way, when the middle class does well, the wealthy do very well. No one gets hurt. The United States made historic, and to the chagrin of some of our critics in the press, bipartisan investments in infrastructure, innovation that are already bringing together and delivering concrete benefits to the American people. And we, as we implement these legislative achievements, there are enormous opportunities for Canada and the United States to work even closer together, to create good-paying jobs in both our countries. The Inflation Reduction Act, which I admit wasn't bipartisan, but nonetheless, all of a sudden I'm finding we have more adherence, represents the single largest commitment in tackling climate in our history. As a matter of fact, the single largest investment in all of human history. And it's going to spur clean energy investments all over the world. And explicitly includes tax credits for electric vehicles assembled in Canada, recognizing there's a simple reason. Recognizing how interconnected our auto industries are and our workers are. I am the most pro-union president America's ever had. No. And I speak to a hell of a lot of Canadian union members. Look, this is a model for future cooperation, with both our nations investing at home to increase the strength of our industrial bases, making sure the products manufactured in North America are not only manufactured, but they're the best in the world. You know, we're going to amplify our shared commitment, climate action, while growing our economies. If I could just stop for just a second and say, you know, when I announced for president, I was always known as one of those kind of green Democrats, and Republicans used to be the same in my place. Well, guess what? I didn't announce my environmental plan, and I was getting beat up. Why is Biden all of a sudden changing? Well, the reason is I brought all the unions together. I brought them into the White House, not a joke, because they all said we're going to lose our jobs. And I pointed out, guess what? Every single solitary initiative required to deal with the environment creates union jobs, creates thousands of jobs, thousands of jobs. For example, I met with the IEBW and pointed out we're going to build 5,500 electric charging stations. Guess who builds them? Union workers. So look, we're coordinating the standard for new electric vehicles and charging stations, so Americans and Canadians can continue to easily cross the border without ever hitting a snag in their American or Canadian-built automobiles, zero-emission vehicles. Moreover, we're going to build batteries and technologies that go into those vehicles together. We've learned the hard way during the pandemic that when we rely on just-in-time supply chains, that circle the globe, there are significant vulnerabilities to disruptions and delays. And it drives up cost here at home, both Canada and the United States. But there's a better way. Our nations are blessed with incredible natural resources. Canada in particular has large quantities of critical minerals that are essential for our clean energy future, for the world's clean energy future. And I believe we have an incredible opportunity to work together so Canada and the United States can source and supply here in North America everything we need for reliable and resilient supply chains. Folks, to help make our critical mineral supply chains the envy of the world, the United States is making funding available under the Defense Production Act to incentivize American and Canadian companies to responsibly mine and process critical minerals needed for electric vehicles and stationary storage batteries. We're also building integrated supply chains for our semiconductors, a critical computer chip that I might note was invented in America, and then we lost control of it. We not only control it, we lost producing them and the power of so much of our daily lives. The IBM plant in Bromont, Quebec, is the largest semiconductor packaging and testing facility in North America. Chips made in Vermont, Chips made in Vermont and upstate New York are shipped to Bromont to be packaged in electronic components. But now Bromont is expanding with the support of the Canadian government. And there's going to be a lot more work to do. Thanks to the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act I signed into law last year, companies are breaking ground for new semiconductor plants across the United States, representing billions of dollars in new investments in American high-tech manufacturing. $12 billion from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company in Arizona. $20 billion in counting for Intel in Ohio. $100 billion in New York, the single largest investment of its kind ever in the world. And chips began to roll off these new production lines in America. A lot of them are going to be coming to Canada to be packaged. And that's a lot of jobs, good paying jobs. And today I'm also making available through the Defense Production Act $50 million to incentivize more U.S. and Canadian companies to invest in packaging semiconductors and printed circuit boards. Look, that brings me to a second pillar of our future. Because of our shared prosperity is deeply connected to our shared security. In the past years have proven that Canada and the United States are not insulated from the challenges that impact the rest of the world. The world needs Canada and the United States working together with our partners around the world to rally strong and effective global action. Nowhere is that more obvious than in our united response to Russia's brutal aggression against Ukraine. We've stood together. To defend sovereignty, to defend democracy, to defend freedom for ourselves and all who wish it. As I told President Zelensky, who I visited with in Kyiv last month, people all over the world are with the brave people of Ukraine. And you have to ask yourself, aren't you amazed of the personal bravery they're showing? It's incredible. It's incredible. Folks, I know there's a large Ukrainian diaspora here in Canada, not just the lovely lady we were all introduced to a moment ago, who feel the same way. Canada and the United States, together with a coalition of 50 nations we've jointly worked to put together, are making sure that Ukraine can defend itself. We're supplying air defense systems, artillery systems, ammunition, armored vehicles, tanks, and so much more. Tens of billions of dollars so far. Together with our G7 partners, we're imposing significant cost on Russia as well, denying Russia critical inputs to its war machine. We're independently holding Russia accountable for the war crimes and crimes against humanity that Russia is committing and continues to commit as I speak today. And Canada and America alike have opened their arms to Ukrainian refugees. Our people know well the high price of freedom. Our peace tower, your peace tower, stands testament to the sacrifices of more than 60,000 brave Canadians who perished in World War I, forever making this nation the champion of liberty. In the words of a Canadian poet, Lieutenant Colonel John McCree, still call to us from Flanders Field, echoing their charge through the ages. And I quote it, to you from failing hands, we throw the torch, to you to hold it high. So today, let's once more affirm that we're going to keep that torch of liberty burning brightly and support the Ukrainian people. Will not wait. Putin was certain he would have been able to break NATO by now. He was certain of that. But guess what? His lust for land and power has failed us far. The Ukrainian people love of their country is going to prevail. In the face of President Putin's aggression against Ukraine, Canada and the United States are also making clear our commitment to our NATO allies. We'll keep our alliance strong and united. We'll defend every inch of NATO territory. An attack against one is an attack against all. And as we look forward to the 75th anniversary of NATO next year, Canada and the United States share a responsibility and a commitment to make sure NATO can deter any threat, defend against any aggression from anyone. That's the bedrock of the security of both our nations. Canada and the United States are not only partners in transatlantic security, we are Pacific nations as well. Earlier this month, we held our first U.S.-Canadian Indo-Pacific dialogue to deepen our cooperation in the vital region to promote an Indo-Pacific that is free and open, and prosperous and secure. We're also an Arctic nation. You both recognize the critical importance of this region to our collective security and the interest of other nations all of a sudden in the Arctic. We're working in close coordination to steward and protect the northernmost reaches of our world. And we are American nations, deeply invested in ensuring that the Western Hemisphere is peaceful, prosperous, democratic, and secure. And that starts with our commitment to defending our people and our own sovereign territory. NORAD is the only binational military command in the world. NORAD is the only binational military command in the world. Yet another way in which our partnership is exceptional. It is an incredible symbol of the faith we have in one another and the trust we place in each other's capabilities. Soon, NORAD will have a new next-generation over-the-horizon radars to enhance our early warning capacity, upgraded undersea surveillance systems, modernized infrastructure that is necessary to host the most advanced aircraft. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work in close partnership with Canada as we deliver on these needs so that our people can continue to rest soundly, knowing NORAD is in the watch. Folks, we're also coordinating closely to take on the human security challenges throughout the region. We're working in partnership with the people of Haiti to try to find ways to provide security, humanitarian assistance, and to help strengthen Haiti's stability. We're tackling the scourge of synthetic drugs that are devastating Canada and American communities, particularly our young people. Fentanyl is a killer. And almost everyone knows someone who has been affected by this, lost a child or lost a friend. Canada and the United States are working closely with our partner Mexico to attack this problem at every stage, from the precursor chemicals shipped from overseas, to the powders, to the pills, to the traffickers, moving into all of our countries. And we all know synthetic opioid epidemic has its roots around the globe, not just here. So today we're announcing a commitment to build a new global coalition of like-minded countries led by Canada and the United States to tackle this crisis. This is about public health. It's about public health. It's about public health, our economic futures, our national security. We're also working together to address the record levels of migration in the hemisphere. The Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, which the United States and Canada signed last June, along with 19 other nations, represents an integrated new approach to the migration challenge, which is real. One that unites humane policies that both secure borders and support people. In the United States, we're expanding legal pathways for migration to seek safety on a humanitarian basis, while discouraging unlawful migration that feeds exploitation and human trafficking. So today, I applaud China for stepping up. I applaud Canada. You can tell what I'm thinking about China. I won't get into that yet. I applaud Canada for stepping up with similar programs, opening new legal pathways for 1,500 migrants to come to Canada from countries in the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, the United States and Canada will work together to discourage unlawful border crossings and fully implement the updated Safe Third Country Agreement. Finally, as we advance our shared prosperity and security, we must never lose sight of our shared values, because our values literally the linchpin holding everything else together. Welcoming refugees and seeking asylum seekers is a part of who Canadians and Americans are. In fact, the United States recently launched a new private sponsorship program for refugees. We call it Welcome Corps, which draws on Canadians' decades of leadership in refugee resettlement, where both countries build upon the nation-to-nation relationship with Native Americans and First Nations. We have both been influenced and strengthened by the contributions of a generation of immigrants. We believe to our core that every single person deserves to live in dignity, safety, and rise as high as their dreams can carry them. We strive to defend human rights, to advance equality and gender equality, to pursue justice, and uphold the rule of law. I want to note the outstanding work Canada has done to build a coalition of nearly 70 countries endorsing the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention and State-to-State Relations. It's not only a statement of values. Our citizens are not bargaining chips. They're not diplomatic leverage. They're human beings with lives and families that must be respected. And I'm very glad to see the two Michaels, Michael Scarvo and Michael Covering. They're safely back to their families after more than 1,000 days, 1,000 days in detention. If my mother were here, she'd say, God bless you both. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for having an opportunity to meet you earlier. You know, the incredible diversity that defines each of our nations is our strength. And the Prime Minister Trudeau and I know this is a belief that you and I share. We both build administrations that look like America and look like Canada. I'm very proud. I'm very proud that both of us have cabinets that are 50% women for the first time in history. Even if you don't agree, guys, I'd stand up. We took the lesson from you, because the bottom line is this. We make it easier for historically underrepresented, underserved communities to dream, to create, to succeed. We build a better future for all our people. So let's continue the work. Where there are no barriers, things look better. Where there are barriers to equal opportunity, we got to tear them down. Where inequity stifles potential, where we unleash the full power of our people, where injustice holds sway, let's insist on justice being done. Those are the shared values that imbue all of our efforts, our very democracy, our vitality, and our vibrancy. You know, it's what seems it drives us all. Some places and some persons are kind of forgetting what the essence of democracy is. We have to reach, it's what allows us to reach beyond the horizon. Let me close with this. The year after President Kennedy spoke in Canada's Parliament, he delivered a famous speech at Rice University, issuing a challenge for Americans to go to the moon in a decade's time. You remember what he said? You probably do, because we had to learn it when we were in school. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things not because it's easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one that we're unwilling to postpone, and one which we will win. That speech tapped into something deep in America's character, something powerful, a belief that we can do big things. If you hold a second, just think about it. Turn on the television the last 2 years, whether it's in your country or mine. After 2 years of COVID, people began to wonder, can we still do big things? Big things. We sure in hell can. That confidence I believe it with every fiber in my being. That confidence can make the most audacious dreams reality. And less than 7 years after Kennedy's speech, the entire world watched humanity lift its first footprints on those further shores. It inspired a generation and spurred much of the technology advancement we now enriches our daily lives. Today, our world once more stands at the cusp of breakthroughs and possibilities that have never before even been dreamt of. And Canada and the United States are leading and will continue to lead the way. In just a few days, NASA is going to announce an international team of astronauts who will crew the Artemis II mission, the first human voyage to the moon since Apollo mission ended more than 50 years ago. Will consist of 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. We choose to return to the moon together. Together we return to the moon. And from there, we look forward to Mars and to the limitless possibilities that lie beyond. And here on Earth, our children who watch that flight are going to learn the names of those new pioneers. They'll be the ones who carry us into the future we hope to build. The Artemis generation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're living in an age of possibilities. Xi Jinping asked me in the Tibetan Plateau, could I define America? And I could have said the same thing if he asked about Canada. I said, yes, one word, and I mean it, one word, possibilities. Nothing is beyond our capacity. We can do anything. We have to never forget. We must never doubt our capacity. Canada and the United States can do big things. We stand together, do them together, rise together. We're going to write the future together, I promise you. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You've been watching President Biden address the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa. The president fired up there at the end, stressing the close relationship between Canada and the United States, saying they are 2 countries sharing one heart. Among the biggest applause lines, the president talking about security, specifically in the context of Ukraine, and saying these 2 nations are united in support of NATO to defend against any threat.